All right, brothers and sisters, greetings. This is sort of a bonus video that comes from a story I remembered, a story from my youth. I was telling my wife last night, and a comment that someone left on my Gratefulness meditation channel. And so this has to do with Christianity and the understanding that Christian followers are told that they're defined by the terms sheep and sinners. Like, you're a sinner and you're a sheep. That's how you're defined, which is an important thing to understand that people take for granted. But first, the story. So I got mono years and years ago. That's come back up, apparently. It's circulating now. But I had it when I was in 4th or 5th grade. I think 4th grade. And it basically took a year of my life. So what happened was my mom was a hypochondriac, which sort of shaped my opinion of allopathic medicine. And I had allergies that I never complained about, and my mom was obsessed with. I got allergy shots. I went to all these doctors. I mean, God knows what they did to me. But at one point, my mom decided, I don't know where she heard this, but I have they have these things called adenoids that if you look at a picture of them, and I'll put a picture here, it is all the way back almost by your ear, right? And my mom, the operation, it's the very back of your nasal passage. Like tonsils, adenoids help keep the body healthy by trapping harmful bacteria and virus that we breathe or swallow. Adenoids do important work as infection fighters for babies and young children. And so, I don't know where my mom heard this, but they stuck a tube, like a metal wand or tube, up through my nose all the way back to my adenoids, which I don't remember that part being painful, but it must have been. And then proceeded to spray the adenoid with some sort of steroid to shrink it. And I don't know what, I was too young to understand, what was going on. But I was a obedient kid, and, I think I've always had kind of a high pain tolerance. But they were doing this, and I wasn't complaining, but tears were pouring down my eyes. I was in excruciating pain, and it felt unbelievably bad. And my mom told them to stop. I mean, at least she got them to stop on one side, right? And I don't know if they're on both. I don't know if it's on both sides. But it was like one of the most painful things I've ever experienced. And to my understanding, it was some sort of steroid, which God knows what was in it back in the 70s, right? And so I went home and I woke up the next day, and my glands were as big as golf balls on the side of my face. Like, I mean, it was like, not golf balls, like softball, like half a softball. Half a grapefruit, that's what I compared it to. Like somebody had cut a grapefruit in half and put one on each side of my neck, and my side of my neck was swollen. And I got a really bad case of mono. I missed 3 months of school. My mom wouldn't let me play and exercise. And, it was a year, it might have been 5th grade. It was a year that, I was on a soccer team that we were all young kids. I think it must have been 4th grade. And so my 1st grade, I was on the soccer team, 1st or 2nd grade. Must have been 2nd grade. And we were all about the same age. We were all the same grade. And we grew together. So we sucked the 1st year. We were pretty good the 3rd year. And we won the championship the 4th year. And I was one of the starting, wing players. Kind of one of the offensive players. And I missed out on the year that we won the championship. Like, they came, and I was like in my, in my bed, I think at home, and brought me a trophy, because I was really sick, right? And there was days like I could barely stand. I was like so weak, and I was sleeping all the time, and I don't know, what drugs they were giving me. But I missed almost like a whole year of school, basically. And then when I went back to school, I couldn't play and hang out and do all the things kids do. And it shaped my idea of hypochondria because it was a completely inflicted on me by my mom, by her whatever her obsession with this thing. And I never really remember suffering from allergies, right? Which as an adult they've mostly gone away. Like I've had to reboot my immune system. I mean, God knows how long it took me to fully recover from this nightmare freaking thing, right? So here's the story that ties into this other thing. And so I missed a whole year of catechism. As a Catholic, you went to catechism, which prepared you for the different things like taking your first communion, in this case, taking your first confession. And so the following year, I think I must have been in 5th grade. So I had mine in 4th grade. In 5th grade, I went for my first confession. And I missed how to say the Hail Mary. In the Catholic Church, you have Our Fathers and Hail Marys. And you get these rosary beads, and there's an Our Father, and there's like 4 or 5 Hail Mary beads. And the Our Father beads are big, and the Hail Mary beads are small. And for every one Our Father, you say 5 Hail Marys, and you go around what's called the rosary beads, right? And then you say the whole rosary, and it's supposed to be valuable in terms of your praying, right? You're praying. And I went to confession, and I made up some stuff, or tried to think of things I did wrong, because I wasn't burdened. I wasn't burdened by guilt. Like I didn't walk around, oh my God, I wish I could confess this stuff to some pedophile. I wasn't burdened by that was just a spontaneous that was a spontaneous thing. But I did have some burden of guilt. So I thought up of things, whatever things I was thinking about, bad things I did, or just made some stuff up. And you go into this booth with one of these pedos priests. None of my priests were pedos, so that's not fair, at least to my knowledge. I think they were just regular priests back then. I mean, not back then, but these guys. And you go in this booth with this dude, and there's a little screen between you, and you sit there and you say, forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. And the father says, well, how long has it been since your last confession? And I was like, well, this is my first time, whatever. And so, don't remember much about it, but he said, all right, say 5 Hail Marys. And I started to panic because I missed the Hail Mary because I was out for a year of catechism, and, I didn't get the Hail Mary. I knew the Our Father, but I didn't get the Hail Mary. So I go back and sit down, and I'm like, my friend's there, and I'm like, hey, I can't do the confession because I don't know Hail Marys. And the kid was probably aware of my motto or whatever. And he said, well, I have 3 Our Fathers. So let's trade. You do the Our Fathers, and I'll do the Hail Marys. And we traded our whatever was called the penance. And I said 3 Our Fathers, and he said 5 Hail Marys. And, we were good to go. So, it's a weird thing. Religion is weird, and that is weird, and that's, it's, and praying is not to be done this way. Like much later when I started doing the Sizemore system and understood praying, ultimately praying, praying is said in the Sizemore system, praying is begging, you're begging God. Usually people pray to God for something or to be relieved of something. Usually when people pray to God, it's because there's something they want to be relieved of in terms of suffering, or something that they want for themselves that they're not able to obtain. So they're usually begging God for something, right? Something has gone awry in their life, and they're begging God to fix it or prevent something, or, get something back that they've lost or whatever. Very seldom do people pray in the right way. So, and it said that praying is begging and meditation is receiving. Meditation, you invite God to, be with you. You invite God into your internal world, right? Or you recognize that God is there, whatever you want to say, and you kind of commune with God, right? You come together with God in your soul. I mean, meditation in the right way, because you can meditate on anything, but whenever you meditate on something, you pull it towards you. you're meditating on something without, you're not praying about it or something. You're meditating on an object, and that object comes to you through meditation. And so, the idea of praying is, the ultimate way to pray would be pray to accept the changes and the difficulties that God and your soul has provided for you for your better self-interest. Pray that you can see them in the right light or overcome them or whatever, but not ask them to change unless it's you feel like something's wrong. And if you believe in God, then everything has a plan and there's nothing wrong. You're experiencing exactly what you should experience. But people don't pray in that way. But anyways, it's a weird thing, the whole confession. Like how, could we trade those things, so that we could go to heaven and be forgiven for it. It's just a weird thing. And it's just, I know it now to be kind of, it's great for a child in a remedial type of, not a remedial, but somebody with not the ability for abstract thought and, can go to a higher level of consciousness and understanding of divinity and have a relationship internally with God, which is spirituality. But, that's one of the things about religion. So then this morning, somebody sent a comment to my Gratefulness meditation. I've deleted all the videos. I made a playlist, and it just had to be that way. And I'm not going to get into the details because it's not to my advantage to do so. But, I just had to delete these videos. The whole thing was bumming me out. And I've made a couple of follow-up videos to explain all of it. And it's kind of interesting that as well. And this guy wrote a comment that he was disappointed. He wanted to watch the videos. And he said, because I was talking about Daji and the people that follow him. And there's all these people that claim to love the third master of the system, Charji, who was a wonderful person and a service person. He wasn't a cult leader. He was a service person. He served people. He served God all the time. That's all he did. And he was, a highly functioning person. And he was born in August, and, it was talked about him being a lion, right? Which is important to the context of what's being said here. But this fourth guy, Daji, who was his disciple, has just thrown Charji under the bus and undermined his credibility, erased his teachings. He's just done the guy dirty. And there are all these people in this heartfulness system over the years, Sajmark system. A lot of them were Indian people that used to weep when they left Charji's presence. And they proclaimed their love for Charji and how much they loved him. Like there's this one woman in particular, she gave these talks and she would push her way through. If there was people would volunteer to be security to make sure that there's some boundaries there, because people would would be inappropriately they would just push their way through to be with Charji when he was in his whatever, wasn't ready to receive people or whatever, right? They would barge into his there was a time where I was, one of my friends who was doing like security asked me to help out. I used to make the coffee in the morning. Like I'd get up early and make the coffee because I like to get up like at 4 a.m. and do my morning meditation and things when I was at these gatherings. And usually I might take a nap in the afternoon or something, but it was like, I really like to do that. They had an ashram in Atlanta. So I'd make the coffee. This is back when I'm drinking coffee, and people appreciated how good the coffee came out, like I was the coffee guy. But, I said I'll help out with security. And the last day, this guy who was my friend, and there was two guys who I was my age and I was friends with. And one of them kind of was a slacker and didn't do much work, and the other guy got pissed. And so he left early and didn't assign anybody to the job because he was mad. I later find out when I told him this story what happened. And the other guy didn't put anybody on the door. And it had run pretty well, so no one was concerned. But I went up, and there was where Charji had like his quarters in he had a couple of rooms in the ashram. And there was a room where they used to meditate when there wasn't a big gathering. Like it's a cheap building they threw up on top of a hill in Georgia, basically. But it had this great spiritual energy there, right? So, and there's these people, they were crowding into the meditation room, and in between the meditation room was one of those doors you'd see in an old-time farm where there was a top to the door and a bottom of the door. And the top of the door was open, And, so I looked at it. I was like going, what's going on? And there's a guy who was working security, but he was with his kid. And he goes, it's not good. Like, it's bad what happened. And so I went in there, and I could see that the top door was open. And Chargy was just sitting there like eating some food, looking depressed. And all these people, there was maybe 100 of them had swarmed into this room. And he clearly didn't want them to be there. And they were just being in there, and and I went in, I kind of pushed my way through them, and I went to the door, and I said to Chargy, Master, you want me to close this door for you? And he looked at me really sadly, he said, please. And so I closed the door, and I shooed everybody out of there. And this one woman led the charge. She's an Indian woman, kind of heavy set, reminds me of like Sad Dumpling Amy Schumer. She's that type. And she gave these weird talks, like she gave a talk where, there's this transmission that's given, and she gave this weird talk where she said, she gave a city, and the transmission's so good she wanted to keep it all to herself, which is, unbelievably, I don't know why anybody would think that, because it's something that flows through you. It's God's love. You want all of God's love for yourself? Just an absolute piece of boop. But this woman, one time, outside of the same room, I walked into the room, and she was outside of the Master Chargy's quarters, and she was just weeping, like uncontrollably, sitting out there just weeping, wanting to be with him. And since he's been dead, she's thrown him under the bus multiple times. Dodgy has given her a position, she's donating money, and she's got a rich husband, and and she said that Chargy was too old-fashioned because he had conservative beliefs. And, and these people are just absolute pieces of boop. They're just, horrible people. Because they proclaim their love for this guy and then watch them be thrown under the bus. And I was saying how they're worthless people. So this guy writes in this comment, he says, just because, like, my mom and her friends all hate the Pope, but they're not going to leave being Catholic, right? They're not going to quit Catholicism. This guy was complaining because I took down the videos, but I'm like, that's not a good comparison, because the Catholic Church has become corrupted, as the Christian religion and all religions have become corrupted. The Sajmark system is now becoming one of these dysfunctional religions, and all of us who are a part of it should be fighting against that. And these people have just laid down, and they're complete passive people. And, in this system, the first master of the system said, I want lions, but I permit sheep to be here out of etiquette, which meant that he wasn't going to kick sheep out, but he didn't want sheep. He wanted lions. And the second master said he wanted lions, and he called the third master a lion, who is very much so. Chargy was this big, he had this gruff voice. He was like 6'3". He had this intimidating presence, and he was born in the month of Leo. So he was like an actual kind of a lion person. But the idea that they want lions and people who could think for themselves and people who weren't just going to be mindless sheep. But this new guy, this fourth guy, Kamlesh, is not a lion, and he wants sheep. He's against lions, and he wants mindless sheep, which is what religions want, right? And then I was thinking about Christianity, and let me get into that. I'll switch over to the ScreenFlow app. So when you grow up as a Christian, you are told that you were born a sinner, and that's all you're ever going to be, right? Your sins can be forgiven, but don't try to be more than that. You're a sinner. For I was born a sinner, yes, from the moment my mother conceived me. I've been out of step for a long time, and this is, somebody Bible study tools. In Adam, we sinned and fell, becoming corrupted ourselves. Thus we were born into sin, and are evil from youth up. Therefore death reigns over all, because all have sinned and fall short of the glory of God. And so being born a sinner, are we born with original sin, right? This is the whole thing. And the whole eating the forbidden fruit and all this stuff. And, it's a negative. We have egos, and the ego can become a demon. And the ego is going to go against God's will, which is, another ways of saying being a sinner. but you also have a soul that's divine, and you have this battle between the two. But when you enter into Christianity, you've already conceded the battle. You've already given up on being a saint or embracing the divinity within you, and you go around life with this sense of guilt and shame that all you ever be is a sinner. This is why the religion sucks. And those of you who are Christians, it's something to think about, right? And so that's the first part. The other part, what does the Bible say about sheep? What does the Bible say about shepherds and sheep? For this is the sovereign. This is what sovereign Lord says: I myself will search for my sheep and look after them, as a shepherd looks after his scattered flock when he is with them. So I look after my sheep. I will rescue them from all places where they are scattered on a day of clouds and darkness. This is a Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I will have that I need. He makes me lie down in the green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He refreshes my soul. He guides me along the right path for his name's sake. Sheep are known to be stupid, right? Like sheep are led by Judas goats. We all know about sheep, right? Sheeple and sheep are stupider than goats. And goats are probably stupider than cows. Cows are pretty smart. Goats are pretty smart, comparatively. But also sheep get sacrificed, right? And so it says here, shortly before the children of Israel were freed from bondage in Egypt, the Lord commanded them to take to them every day, to every man a lamb without blemish, a male of the first year. Each family chose a lamb on the 14th day of the first month and sacrificed it, being careful to avoid breaking any bones. So they sacrifice sheep throughout the Bible. This is not the only place. And sheep are sacrificed, right? Of course, the most famous sheep sacrifice is when Abraham was told by God to sacrifice his heir and his only son, or his son by his wife. This is the difference between Isaac, right? There was Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael became the leader of the Arabs and eventually the Muslims. So this was the break. I've talked about this before. But he's on the mountain and he's going to sacrifice his son. And God says, just kidding, just testing you. Ha ha ha. By the way, we got to sacrifice something because you're already up at the altar. So here's one of your rams, male sheep. Sacrifice this guy on the altar for me. Because I like sacrifices, I like when you kill stuff. And, the blood and everything. So go ahead and do that, right? And so he sacrifices this sheep and lamb. But, again, people are called sheep and, the Lamb of God. The people are referred to as sheep and lambs because they had a lot of sheep and lambs over there, in that part of the world. And people are referred to that. We know how we feel about sheep here. And we know in the Bible sheep get sacrificed. And so just something to think about. That you're defined as being a sinner and a sheep. These are how you're defined as a practitioner of the system, right? And, nobody really likes sheep, right? I mean, when you're an abusive person, when you're a scumbag, when you're a bad king, yeah, you want sheep. You want mindless sheep. You want slaves. That's another word for slaves. And you want sheep who follow you around. But, sheep still do stupid stuff. He doesn't like sheep are just all that obedient because they're kind of stupid and that's why they need dogs and, border collies and these things to herd them. It isn't like they're very cooperative, right? That's why they get these Judas goats to lead them to their death, because a sheep will follow a goat because they realize goats are smarter than them. And so they go, all right, well, we can't figure things out, so let's follow this goat. And of course, goats have reference to being Baphomet, right? Which is what we're seeing now in the world today. So, how you're defined in an organization is important. And it doesn't look at your best potential, which is you have a potential saint inside you. You have a potential divine master. You can be a realized soul who is self-actualized in the sense of embracing the divinity within you and allowing that to flourish and minimizing your ego and your negative, the part of you that's separate and can do wrong and, go against the will of God. And so, these are just some thoughts. I mean, kind of interesting how this all kind of came together. It's a little bonus video here. That's it for now. Only spirituality will save this world. It's Paul Romano, definitely pointing from the Apocalypse. and the ascension. Everyone have a blessed day and be grateful.